Welcome to Serial Knowledge Crime Cast, where we dive deep into the mysteries and unsolved cases that continue to haunt communities across the country. I'm Brianna,
And I'm Meg.
and in today's episode, we're bringing you two very different but equally chilling stories. First, we'll explore one of the most infamous cold cases in American history, the unsolved murder of JonBenet Ramsey. It's been nearly 3 decades since a 6-year-old beauty pageant star was found dead in her family's home. Despite the years of media attention, investigations, and theories, questions still linger about who took her life on that fateful Christmas night.
Then we'll shift focus to the mysterious disappearance of Cieha Taylor. In 2020, 28-year-old Cieha vanished without a trace in Plant City, Florida, leaving behind her abandoned car and a heartbroken family desperate for answers. We'll go over the timeline, the leads, and the haunting silence that surrounds this case.
As we dig into these stories, we'll examine the clues, theories, and impact these cases have had not only on their families, but on the public at large. Join us as we search for the truth behind these tragic mysteries and honor the memories of JonBenet Ramsey and Cieha Taylor.
So, at the time of her disappearance, JonBenet Ramsey was 6 years old. She was she participated in a lot of these beauty pageants, which she was doing right before she disappeared. She did her little Christmas pageants. She disappeared on December 26, 1996, so the day after Christmas. Around 5:30 a.m., she was reported missing after her mom found a 3-page ransom note on their staircase in their house demanding $118,000, which is a very specific amount of money.
Wasn't that the exact same amount that, like, the dad had just gotten for a work bonus or something like that?
Yeah, the exact same amount. Was this somebody that knew? Like, it had to have been somebody close to the family if they knew exactly the amount that he had gotten for his Christmas bonus.
Yeah, somebody had to have known that that was the amount of money because it is so specific,
Yeah.
especially for, like, 1996. That's also a really large amount of money.
Her parents claim that she was kidnapped because of this ransom note that they found. About 7 to 8 hours later, so around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, her parents found her in their basement. A little odd that they hadn't checked the whole house before, and they only just found her hours later.
Yeah, that they didn't go down there and look for her or
Right.
anything like that.
So when she was found, she was wrapped in a white blanket. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. Looked like she was strangled to death. It said that she was possibly assaulted. So it was ruled a homicide due to the evidence. Police treated it as a crime scene, but they also let people go in and out. At that point, they're compromising any evidence that they have.
Yeah, you're just letting people get their DNA and potentially even taking out evidence from the home. You really don't know in that instance.
Right. So to this day, the only evidence that they have is the ransom note, which matched exactly what John's Christmas bonus was. Now, what's interesting about that is that ransom note was written on a notepad from their home. This ransom note had to have been written while this person was in the house because they used the paper from the Benet's house.
Yeah, all of this is saying, like, the call is coming from inside the home.
So the DNA on the body did not match any family members or lead to any suspects. So whoever did it did a pretty good job of hiding any evidence. There was presence of foreign DNA, but again, nothing that could lead them to any suspect. Now, to this day, the public believes that the investigators did not collect as much like hair evidence and fiber samples as they should have, and they believe that if they had collected more, they could have possibly found a killer. And of course, now, 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's too late now to go back and get any evidence that they could have missed because they didn't do it back then.
Right. There's a few theories that have been going around since the beginning. The first theory is that her parents did it. The speculation on that is the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus, as well as the notepad from the house where they wrote the ransom note on. Another one of the theories is that it was an intruder. At the time, there were a lot of break-ins in the area of their house. There were reported suspicious individuals in the area at that time, which were not linked to her disappearance. Again, they did not have enough evidence to prove whether that was true or false. There was a lack of forced entry, not necessarily saying that somebody didn't break in. I've heard rumors I don't know how true it is, but I've heard rumors of how there was a window in the basement that was unlocked. So that could have either been left open by whoever committed this crime, or, it was unlocked beforehand and somebody did break in. But there was no like broken windows, no doors kicked open or anything like that. Another theory was an accidental death by the family, and it was covered up by the family. So again, we bring them into the picture, and that's just saying that they were messing around and things got bad, and then she died and they did not report it, they just covered it up. The last theory was a sexual predator, which, based on the nature of her injuries, could have been a strong possibility.
Now, have you heard where they've discussed, like, them thinking that it was the brother that did it?
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard that before.
I feel like, and obviously nothing has come from this case, but I've seen so much about it potentially being the brother. And I feel like that could make sense because I feel like if the parents had actual involvement, they wouldn't have done something like leave that ransom note. But also, it would make sense that, like, somebody in the family would know how much the check was and, use that to potentially cover it up. But it shows that they're also not that smart criminally to do something like that, use things from the home and match the amounts of money.
Right, yeah. I definitely heard that theory and everything makes sense. I think that was something that I had believed for a little while because a lot of this evidence just seems very doesn't really make sense. A lot of this case.
Yeah, and the evidence just seems, like I said, like somebody that's not really experienced.
Yeah, definitely. And, if it was the brother, it would make sense that the family helped cover it up if they knew about it. This case had brought a lot of media coverage, which was leading to a lot of speculation on who did it. Because to this day, again, it's been almost 30 years and we still do not have any knowledge of a killer besides the theories and the speculation.
This makes me wonder too, like if this case would have happened recently, how different it would be.
I think if it were to have happened in today's day and age, the knowledge and the technology and stuff that we have now would possibly have helped us to catch the killer.
Yeah, because I think that it would have been, obviously, DNA would have been easier to obtain, the advancements that have happened with DNA since then, and the crime scene mapping and logging of evidence and things like that, I think are more advanced too, and I think also security cameras that are at homes and things like that, I feel like it would have helped them a lot had this been today. I don't know if this would have still remained unsolved.
Like you said with the cameras and stuff, I feel like almost every single person these days has a camera outside of their house. I mean, I know I have one because you never know what will happen. Somebody would have caught something.
Yeah, it was definitely a very rare to have really forms of security systems.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Speaking of technology, in 2016, new technology we had gotten had allowed for further DNA testing, but they still were not able to find any suspects, any conclusive DNA to link anybody to the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. We're going to go back a little bit. In 2008, all of her family was cleared because none of the DNA had matched any of them. I feel like there was not enough evidence to really point it towards anybody at this point.
I wonder what DNA they're comparing this to, though, because I believe that the system that they use for DNA testing is the Codex, and I believe you have to have a prior criminal history to be entered into that. So I wonder if they did go to like I'm sure that they got DNA from immediate family, but I'm wondering if they kind of went out a ring to like close friends and acquaintances and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. I mean, I think it was mostly just the family. And again, they didn't have really the technology back then. I'm sure if they had the technology back then, that this could have been a solved case. What are your thoughts on the whole case? Who did it? What's your opinion?
I feel like it's so strange. Like I said, I feel like had this been a more recent case, that there would have been more developments. But I just find it so odd because this is a little girl that, she was well known, and I feel like this is one of those things that, "Oh, this doesn't happen around here." So you would think that somebody would have known something, and it definitely makes me feel like somebody does know something and that they've been able to hide it for all these years. I wish that the father's pleas for more DNA testing would be answered, even if it is to just continue ruling people out, because this is such a cold case that there's gotta be something somewhere that finds a conclusion to this case.
Especially since we know it was somebody close to the family. They have to have tested everybody. So for them to have not found anybody based on that DNA, still such a cold case.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that this would have been something that was random, like somebody snuck into the home or something like that, especially with the fact that she was found in the home and it seems like everybody was at home. I mean, this is a 6-year-old girl. They're not going to leave her home alone to go out and do stuff. Like, they're going to be present.
Recently, the Boulder Police Department convened a panel of outside experts, the Colorado Cold Case Review Team, to review the JonBenet Ramsey homicide investigation. The purpose of the review was to generate additional investigative recommendations and determine if updated technologies and or forensic testing might produce new intelligence or leads to solve the case. The Colorado Cold Case Review Team spent the past year preparing for the review. The team is comprised of professional, investigative, analytical, and forensic experts from across Colorado, including the FBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Boulder County District Attorney's Office, and numerous other entities, including private and public forensic laboratories, with expertise in cold case homicide investigations. An intensive effort digitized all evidence to create a comprehensive and searchable database containing thousands of information files, bringing together more than 21,000 tips, over 1,000 interviews conducted across 17 states and 2 foreign countries, and samples from more than 200 different individuals, including handwriting, DNA, fingerprints, and shoe prints. The case file consists of nearly 2,500 pieces of evidence and roughly 40,000 reports, with more than 1 million pages documenting the investigation. A fresh inventory of all collected evidence was made available for investigative review.
I think this is really cool. I guess it does kind of tie into what I was saying of like, what would happen with today's access to resources. So I think it's really cool that this has been a new development in this case to get all of this together and be able to have that access. I hope that it really does bring more information or at least new eyes to look over the previous information and maybe see if something was overlooked.
And that's what we've said is so great with the new technology that's coming out, because this is a lot of stuff that this case file has. And so hopefully over time, they will be able to find who killed JonBenet Ramsey. Anyone with information related to this investigation is asked to contact the tip line at 303-441-1974 or by email at bouldersmostwanted@bouldercolorado.gov. As we leave behind the haunting story of JonBenet Ramsey and the questions that still surround her case, we turn now to another heart-wrenching mystery, this time one that's much more recent and still unresolved. Let's shift our focus to the disappearance of Cieha Taylor, a young woman whose sudden vanishing in 2020 left her family and the Plant City community in shock. While her name isn't as widely known, her case is just as pressing, and her loved ones are still searching for answers. Here's what we know about Cieha's story.
So, Kaya Taylor, she's 28 years old. On the night of February 6, 2020, she drops her boyfriend, Jason Roberts, also known as JD, off at his friend's house, Kevin Ring, in Plant City around 4 p.m. Kevin Ring's father says that he did see her car leave. But around 7 p.m., her Toyota Solara was reported to 911 because it was in the middle of train tracks and blocking traffic. The cops went out to investigate the car, and it was about 1 mile away from the boyfriend's home. Her purse and her wallet were found inside of the car, and her phone was on the ground next to the car with her door open. There was no sign of Kaya there. Now, when law enforcement discovers this car, they assume that it's a typical car being broken down, so they get the car and they move it just to the side of the road. They shut it, they lock it, they don't do anything else with it. They don't look into it, nothing like that. So it's not until 3 days later where Jason's mom is driving to go over to Jason's house and she sees this car and recognizes that it's Kaya's car. So she asks Jason about why Kaya's car is on the side of the road. And simultaneously, Jason is contacting friends and AAA to try to get AAA to come and unlock the car. Jason's mom contacts Kaya's mom on Facebook to let her know that they've found Kaya's car. So the friends and family have them get the car and bring the car back to Kaya's mom's house, which I also believe is where Kaya was living at that time as well. They get the car. Kaya's family didn't realize that nobody had seen her in these last 3 days. So they then report her missing to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Whenever Kaya's car gets back, they see that her phone is there. They open the phone and they're looking through the last of her messages, trying to get some information about where she was, what was going on. And they see that her last Facebook message was to her boyfriend, Jason, and it stated, "You sent your white supremacist friends to deal with me. You think you're so smart. I'm smart." Obviously, this is very alarming message to see given the fact that now Kaya is missing.
I wanted to talk about, throw it back to the police officers. As a police officer, if you see a car on the train tracks with no person in sight, wouldn't you check, like, at least the ID and see who it was? Call it in, see if anybody had called something in. I just think that had they done something that day when they found that car, that it's possible they could have found Kaya at that point.
But having that car there with the door open and all of those things, that should raise an alarm bell where you don't just assume that it's a typical situation. So I will talk about it, but I actually do commend the police for how they have handled this case since she's gone missing, since she's been reported and stuff. So on the Monday when she was reported missing, deputies and canines went out and they searched that whole area. The following day, deputies were going door to door handing out flyers. They had helicopters out scanning the area. They were canvassing the neighborhoods in the area where her car was found. They even set up road stops to stop every car that came through, and they were questioning them, "Do you travel through here often? Have you seen this girl?" Handing out her missing flyers. Unfortunately, all of this yielded no response. There was no sign of her, nobody had seen her. People had stated that they noticed the car. They said, "Oh, it just appeared there. I didn't see who brought the car. I didn't see anybody get out of it. I just saw that the car was there."
My thing is maybe she didn't actually break down there, and whoever took her put it there just to throw people off.
Yeah, and I think a good reminder here is that now I want to preface all of this by saying nobody has been charged. This is still just a missing persons case. They have not found Kaya. So all of this is just information that has been received through media interviews, through newspaper articles, through the Finding Kaya Facebook page. None of this has been taken to court, no charges have been filed. But where the car was found was only 1 mile away from the boyfriend's house. And something else that I found that was curious is that on February 26th, so 20 days after she goes missing, Kaya's shoes are found at the base of a light pole that had one of her missing flyers on this light pole. This is an area that had been searched extensively, and the family had felt like the shoes had been intentionally placed there because they said, "We put these flyers up. We've looked in this area." The sister bought Kaya her shoes that she was wearing that were found at the base of this light pole. The sister said, "I would have recognized that those shoes were there during this whole thing." Honestly, I find that to be really chilling, the fact that her shoes just show up at the base where her poster is at.
Yeah. I mean, obviously somebody was holding on to those for a reason, I don't know, but I think maybe they were waiting. Maybe it was kind of like a I know where she is, I know what happened to her kind of thing.
And it also tells me that wherever she ended up, she's without shoes.
Right.
You're not just gonna go wandering off into the woods without your shoes on. You're not gonna just go running away without your shoes on. So I think that that's alarming.
Yeah, definitely.
So there have been multiple theories and possible leads on what could have happened to Kaya this night, and where she went. The first one is that it could have been self-harm or an accident. The investigators considered this possibility of her wandering away, which led to an accident or intentional disappearance, but there's no solid evidence that supports that this was intentional on Kaya's part. The family is really adamant that she would not have done this. They firmly believe that she would not have done something to hurt herself, to disappear. The boyfriend and a friend were interviewed and they said that Kaya had been acting strangely that night. The friend that spoke to Kaya on the phone said she sounded strange, but she believed that Kaya had been fighting with her boyfriend, Jason.
which we know to have been true based on that Facebook message that the friends had seen.
Yeah, and so who knows if the fight was because of the message, if the fight was before or after that message, if she went over there, like, dropping him off because they had been fighting, but they know that she had left that home, Kevin Ring's house, upset, and they said yelling.
Yeah, and I don't know too much about this case, but I know you had said something when we were talking about how they had been fighting because he had found out that she was mixed because he thought that she was white.
Everything here is alleged on this, but I do remember back when this case first happened that there had been talk of that being potentially something that had fueled the conflict that happened that night between Kaya and her boyfriend Jason. Aside from that message, there's no evidence towards that one way or another, but it would make sense if they were arguing over something like race. So, one of the other theories was domestic issues. The boyfriend Jason had not participated in any of the search efforts, and the relationship between Kaya and Jason was not one that was approved of by the family. The details of the relationship, there's not really been much that's been put out about it, but the family did find it odd because when they got her phone back those couple days later, Jason had not tried to call or text Kaya at any point during those 3 days. There was no missed calls from Jason. There was no text messages after Kaya had dropped him off at Kevin Ring's home.
I can understand like having gotten into a fight and then taking the night to kind of settle down and just pick it up the next morning, with a nice conversation or something. But going days without talking to somebody and you haven't heard from her and you haven't called or texted to be like, hey, are you good? Anything like that.
Well, exactly. And then her car is parked on the side of the road 1 mile from your house. You are telling me that 3 days go by and you don't see that that car is there?
Oh, yeah. It's just interesting to me that you hadn't tried to reach out to her, and like you said, that her car was found a mile from his house, which is not very far. You're telling me you didn't leave your house, you didn't see her car. Anybody would have seen that car and been like, "Oh, I know that car."
Well, and Plant City is a very small town. It is primarily strawberry fields, agriculture. There's not really a lot of people that live there because it's more rural Florida. So typically the people around there know each other. Everybody is pretty close. It's one of those more communities everybody knows everybody. Following the family finding out that Jason had not tried to call or text or anything like that, they had friends that were interviewed. Kevin Ring was one of the friends that was interviewed, and he said that Kaya had been at his house. His dad stated that he had seen Kaya leaving in her Toyota Solara that night. The police even searched Kevin Ring's home. There was nothing that came from that. So the police have not named anybody a suspect in this case. And also, there's the fact of Jason, Kevin, and Kevin's father are the ones that had said that Kaya had been there and that she had left the house upset and yelling. That's the only proof that she had been at that home that evening. And then there is another theory, which I feel like is less likely, and that's the potential for her being kidnapped for trafficking. Now, where Plant City is, it's right off of I-4, which I-4 connects to the 95. So you can really, within about 2-3 hours, be going pretty much anywhere. You could go down to Miami, you could be in Georgia. It's very connected set of roads there, very close to Plant City off of I-4. I personally think that with the circumstances surrounding that disappearance that night, I think that this is probably the less likely option out of all of these, but it's still possible because there have been a string of mysterious disappearances of young women around Kaya's age in this area over the last few years.
And we know that human trafficking is a big thing these days, no matter where you go, really.
Yeah, and like I said, you have port access there. You got the Port of Tampa, which is about 45 minutes away. Port of Miami, that's right there. You've got Jacksonville, Savannah. There's a lot of ports that are within a pretty short driving distance from that area there.
So, how has the family been in this case?
So her family, God bless them, because they are not giving up. And since the beginning, this family has really just put every single effort that they can into this. The family has been so dedicated to finding Kaya and raising awareness about her case. They've also been very vocal about the other missing women in this area as well. There's a page called Finding Kaya, Cieha, on Facebook, where the family shares updates about Kaya. They have unfortunately been having to do counts of she's been missing 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Kaya's family has held vigils at the train tracks. They have initiated large search parties. They've been doing fundraisers. They're doing anything and everything that they can to get her name and image out to the public. And now, what I also find to be really cool, like I said, I'm giving props to the sheriff's department here, to Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. During the course of this missing persons case, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office decided to launch a cold case podcast. On the very first episode, they decided to highlight the disappearance of Kaya Taylor on their cold case podcast. Even the sheriff's department is still really exploring every avenue, but it's really hard for them because there's just such a lack of tips coming in, a lack of information. And now the family is really starting to feel a timeline because this February 2025, will be 5 years that Kaya has been missing. And what happens in the state of Florida is that once you've been missing for 5 years with no explanation to your whereabouts, you are then presumed dead. So I think that the family is really continuing this push to figure out what has happened to Kaya and where she is. The family has stated that they do believe that she was murdered and that they think that they know who did it. But again, the police have not been able to name any suspects or anything like that.
Now, I know that family thinks she was murdered. I get that. But we also know of cases where people have been held captive for years. And do you think that's a possibility?
I would really love to see Kaya come home to her family. Um,
Absolutely.
I think it's really hard to say, but I do know that there's suspicious individuals that are surrounding Kaya during this time, and I think that if those individuals really wanted Kaya to be found, that I think that they would have by now.
Yeah.
I mean, it has happened before, so
Right.
it's not something that is completely out of the realm of possibility. Uh,
But it's just very, very rare for it to happen.
yeah.
I do pray that she is found and she is safe, which is a possibility.
Yeah, and with the family stating that they do feel like she was murdered, I think still justice for this family, if they can't bring Kaya home, is to at least know where she is and to have the information to not have to continue their lives just wondering what's happened to her. That is just torture on this family. That is continuing to feed into this hurt that this family's experiencing, and I think that that is such a heartbreaking thing for them. The current state of this case, there has been a recent arrest of Kevin Ring and Jason. This has been unrelated to the case of Kaya, but they were arrested on felony charges. Kevin was charged with 73 felony counts that deal with drugs and firearms. Jason was also arrested. He had lesser charges, so he's been released. But due to the charges that are happening with Kevin, he is not free to go. The family is hoping that through the arrest and the detainment of Kevin, that they may be able to get him to speak about what's happened with Kaya, and that this will provide some information and some missing pieces that they have been looking for this whole time. So, through this all, Kaya's mom has stated, "There's a hole in my heart like it's broken. It's a wound that can't be healed. And no mother should ever, have to experience this. No brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. Nobody should have to live day to day knowing that one of their loved ones is missing and that there has been such a lack of information about their whereabouts. Kaya Taylor was last seen on February 6th of 2020. She is 5 feet 6 inches tall, 170 pounds with red auburn hair and brown eyes. Her car was found abandoned on East Trapnell Road, just west of Jack Tucker Road in Plant City, Florida. Her family is offering a reward for any information that leads to finding Kaya. They have their Facebook page, which is Finding Kaya, and like I said earlier, it's spelled Cieha. They have an Instagram at Finding Kaya, and their email address is findingkaya@yahoo.com. If you have any information, you can let the family know on one of their socials, or you can also contact the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office at 813-247-8000.
That wraps up today's episode. Thank you for joining us as we explored the unsolved mysteries surrounding JonBenet Ramsey and Kaya Taylor. These cases, while different in so many ways, both underscore the importance of community awareness and persistence in the search for truth. We hope today's discussion sheds light on the lives behind these stories and inspires our listeners to stay engaged. And next time on Serial Knowledge Crimecast, we'll be diving into two cases that have gripped the nation and stirred intense public reaction. First, we'll look into the shocking and twisted story of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, a tale of manipulation, tragedy, and loss that left 2 children dead and a community shaken. Then we'll explore the heartbreaking murder of Tristan Bailey, a young girl from St. Johns County, Florida, whose life was brutally cut short by someone she knew. Join us as we delve into these cases, examining the backgrounds, the evidence, and the ripple effects that these crimes have had on communities, families, and beyond.